What if in Magic the Gathering, when your life total hit 0, you won the game instead of losing? Well, that is basically the premise of this Dandan variant. Hello and welcome to the channel where nothing is sacred and I will change the rules of whatever game I feel like. And you can't stop. Today we have yet another Dandan variant, this time a black-white deck. I'm hoping to do one of every color combination. We did the 5 monocolored ones in the original other Dandan video, and then we did Slab Dan, which is built around Stomping Slabs, which counts as our blue-red one. And so this one's the black-white. Now before we get started, I would love if you subscribe to our channel and like the video. It helps grow our creative little community, and if you have a cool idea for a unique Dandan variant or a new idea for a Magic format that you would like to see in a video, please let us know in the comments or consider joining our Discord and post your idea in the MTG channel. Now let's dig into this deck. Race to Zero is the name of this deck, and it's a deck inspired by Mator from our community. Their deck originally had players starting at 100 life with the goal of reaching 0 life before their opponent. The card choices in their deck reflect this, with many cards that can lose 10 or even 20 life at a time. One of the minor themes is goading opposing creatures, forcing them to attack you, thus lowering your life total. I chose to keep some of this in my list, but I took a lot of it out, as I felt it incentivized not playing any creatures whatsoever. If your opponent was almost guaranteed to have a way to goad your creature, why in the world would you even cast a creature? Especially the efficient ones like Bloodthirsty Blade and Redemption Arc. I also felt this list might be too draw dependent, as in it was very luck based as to which cards you drew that could lose large amounts of life at a time. The counterplay didn't quite feel all there for me either, but the idea was incredibly solid. So starting with Mator's idea, I jumped into list building for myself and came out with something close to this list. One of the largest differences in my version is the fact that players actually still start at 20 life instead of 100. We're going to get into the reason for that in a bit, but let's start with the basics. How do we plan to unalive ourselves? Which cards will do the trick? Well, since this is a black-white deck, and black has a penchant for paying life for cards, we have plenty of ways to draw more cards and lose life doing so, with cards like Greed, Audacious Thief, Corpse Augur, Infernal Contract, Dark Tutelage, and Treacherous Blessing, and of course we have a nice suite of pain lands to help tick down the life total at a steady pace, with Caves of Koilos, If Near Dead Lands, and Shefet Dune. But I mentioned before that I wanted more back and forth in this deck, more interaction and strategy baked into the card choices. And to do this, you need cards that your opponent will perceive as threats. In a normal game of Magic, these would typically be creatures and spells that can hit them really hard. But since that's what they want you to do, we're going to need something that threatens to hit us really hard. For this deck, it comes in the form of cards like Dross Harvester to lose 4 life every turn, and Morinfen to slowly build up large quantities of life loss. Also, cards like Caustic Bronco can sometimes do the trick as well, but not all threats have to cause you to lose large amounts of life. Cards like Ebon Drake, Orzhov Guildmage, or Smolder Initiate are useful creatures that will allow you to whittle yourself away slowly. In addition to these, the deck has cards that incentivize certain strategic plays and cards that help you play around them. For example, Killing Wave and Minions Murmurs incentivize building a wide board to benefit from the life loss of these cards. However, an opponent could punish that wide board with a card like Rain of Daggers that kills all of your creatures and allows them to lose a lot of life in the process. Now, after seeing the ways we can lose life, you might wonder, why in the world would I change the life total from 100 all the way down to 20? The game is going to end so fast, and there's little you can do about that. And you'd be absolutely right in that scenario if it weren't for all the ways to make your opponent gain life. For small ball life gain, Orzhov Guildmage, mentioned before, can cause target player to gain a life. But that might be too small. We need to think bigger. Oust? Well, Oust is neat, but it only gains them 3 life and only in 1 shot, so that's still not enough, right? Heliod's Intervention. Okay, now we're talking. Some flexibility to kill their enchantments, but overall the card is still pretty mana intensive to gain them a lot of life. These can't be enough to stem their self-inflicted bleeding. You know what? Again, you are so right. I shouldn't have hid this from you for so long. Look right there. There are 10 copies of Life Bursts. There, I said it. For those of you who have never heard of this card before, Life Burst is 1 and a white for an instant that says target player gains 4 life, then gains 4 life for each Life Burst card in each graveyard. We share a graveyard. Now that is a lot of life gain. In fact, the final Life Burst can gain someone a whopping 40 life. And this is the dance you're going to play. Do you progress your board to get more life-losing tools in play, or do you hold up a life burst just in case they can lose a lot of life all at once? Should you cast your life burst now for a smaller amount, or wait until they cast theirs so you can get an extra 4 out of it? If they even have one. Maybe they're bluffing by leaving up 2 mana. How do you know? Last thing to mention before we get into gameplay rundown is the interaction pieces I've added. There are a decent number of removal spells, but just remember, it won't always be a good idea to target your opponent's creatures with them. Sometimes it's going to be better to save it for whenever they try to force your creatures to attack, or when you need to kill your corpse augur yourself. But also, don't be afraid to use removal on something like a Caustic Bronco or a Morinfane, as those are going to be much worse for you the longer they stay out. We also put 2 copies of Agonizing Remorse in the deck, as we felt a little bit of hand disruption would go a long way for allowing players to interact with the 10 copies of Life Burst at the right time. If you like this idea as a part of the deck, I would highly recommend increasing the number of discard spells in it. Oh, also, disclaimer, we couldn't actually find any Agonizing Remorses out for our version, so we're playing Thoughtseizes in the video, but don't mind that. Remorse is the preferred card for that slot, for pricing reasons, but also because it exiles. Anyway, let's look at the deck in action, shall we? So in this game, I start off with a barely perceptible Desert of the True and Past, and my brother plays a much more visible Desert of the Glorified, passing as well. I untap, draw, play an If Near Deadlines, and cast a Caustic Bronco, taking a pain from my Deadlands, technically putting me in the lead. My brother plays a Chef at Dunes, the White Pain Desert, and ends his turn. So it looks like I'm free to attack with my Bronco. I resolve the trigger and lose 3 life from an Audacious Thief. Cards like Bronco are a trade-off. Attacking your opponent will damage them, putting them closer to their goal, but will also draw you cards and usually make you lose life as well. My brother takes 2 damage from the Bronco, putting him at 18 and me at 16. I follow up with a Temple of Silence, allowing me to scry 1. I proceed to take a pain down to 15 and play a Smolder Initiate, and then pass the turn with 1 mana open. My brother uses my end step to cast the first life burst of the game, putting me to 19. On my brother's turn, he also plays his own Deadlands, putting his pain land count up to 2, meaning he can, at the very least, lose 2 life a turn. He chooses to cast a Dross Reaver using white from his Chef at Dunes. Also, remember, you can pay colorless costs with colored mana from Pain lands. You should always be taking Pain from your Pain lands. I use this opportunity where a black spell is cast to use Smolder Initiate's ability to put me down to 18. At his end step, Dross Harvester causes him to lose an additional 4 life, sending him all the way down to 11 and in the lead for now. On my turn, I choose to attack again with my Bronco, but unfortunately lose 0 life from a Chef at Dunes on the top. My brother deliberates on whether or not to block. If he doesn't, he will get to lose an additional 2 life, but if he does, he will get to kill my card advantage and life loss engine at the cost of him gaining 2 life from Dross Reaver's ability. He ends up deciding not to block, sending him down to 9, and then I play another Desert of the True and pass, leaving up 3 mana. At this point, with the Dross Reaver's 4 life loss ability and my brother's 2 pain lands, he's effectively at 3 life already, so I cannot risk tapping out. He casts a Dark Tutelage, taking 1 pain down to 8. I eventually decide to pay 1 for my Initiate using the Deadlands, and he also casts an Oust on my Bronco. This causes me to gain 3 life, so that leaves me at 19, way behind my brother. We end his turn with me casting the second life burst of the game, and him losing 4 from his Reaver, resulting in him net gaining 4 life and ending at 11. On my turn, I decide to do nothing and pass right back to him. For his Dark Tutelage trigger, he draws the previously ousted Bronco and loses 2 life down to 9. He plays a Swamp and then casts Morinfane, putting him down to 7, but I respond with a Devour Flesh, making him sacrifice the Dross Reaver. This makes him gain 4 life from the toughness of the Reaver, but also 2 more since a creature died, which triggers Dross Reaver's ability. Additionally, I follow up in his end step with the 3rd life burst of the game, gaining him 12 more life. We end his turn with me in the lead at 18 and him at 25. On my turn, I take a pain and cast Thoughtseize. Now, as a reminder, this card should be Agonizing Remorse, but if you have Thoughtseize lying around, it does work well in this deck. He reveals the Bronco from before, an Orzhov Basilica, and an Arbiter of Knoll Ridge. This Thoughtseize could not have come at a better time. I take the Arbiter, saving me 10 or more life. I cast my Audacious Thief and pass the turn back. The game proceeds from there with us drawing cards for life and trading resources. But unfortunately, my brother draws another Dross Reaver, which helps him eke through that 25 life no problem, and the final turn goes like this.
3 down to 10. Flip the tutelage down to 8. Draw for turn. Alright.
Don't what? No.
And step lose 4. Target myself twice.
Yeah, good job. Damn it. Overall, it's a pretty creative deck with a lot of fun things going on. We play tested it a couple of times, and while it wasn't the most complicated or difficult Dandan I've ever played, it was still very fun and not too busted in any direction. The first iteration I played was before the recording, and it still included Demonic Lore. That card was instantly too busted in this 20 life version, as you could easily lose 10 to 14 life on turn 3 if you wanted to, putting you incredibly close to death, if not already there. Other than that, it did feel like the pain lands were slightly too good and ubiquitous. They either need to be removed altogether, or they need to be reduced, as they were typically the strongest cards in the deck, by accumulating a lot of life loss at practically no cost to the player. I think that what I would do is remove the deserts from the equation. Just play 4 caves, reducing it from 12 pain lands down to 4, a much more reasonable number. We still want to use the pain land upside to its advantage in this interesting deck, but overall, the player with more pain lands is just at a huge advantage. It doesn't always mean that they're going to win, it just means they're way ahead for no cost. Like I said, it could be advised to just remove them completely for balance reasons, forcing players to actually pay for their life loss. Or if you are okay with increasing the cost of the deck, you can include shock lands, as they are a flat amount of 2 damage rather than a turn-by-turn stream that can add up to 5 or even 6 damage per land. If I had any other suggestions for this deck to change, it would probably be to add more hand disruption like Agonizing Remorse. And if you can't find more cards to add that fit that role, you can always just play more Agonizing Remorse itself if you have to. Though I do like to keep my non-lands at 2 or 10 copies to help emphasize importance and variety. Anyways, thanks as always for watching, and please keep the deck ideas coming, and please stay creative.